Dawson.
And I move the motion relating to the legal system and the environment in the terms in which it appears on the notice paper. Mr Deputy Speaker, I rise to speak on this motion, which is of the utmost importance to the people of North and Central Queensland. This motion recognises that thousands of North Queensland families remain jobless because a small group of people don't like the industry the state's biggest job-creating project operates in. A small but very vocal group of extreme Greens have formed an army of eco-terrorists using any means they can to impose their own ideological agenda on Australia. One of those means is abusing the legal system, which is supposed to ensure the rule of law is observed to protect citizens' rights and freedoms. Our legal system, unfortunately, is now a weapon used to wage a war against capitalism, against jobs, against progress and against development. That strategy has inspired the term lawfare, an apt term because it means using the law to wage warfare on jobs. In Queensland, Adani's Carmichael mine project would employ thousands of people to build the country's largest coal mine, to expand the port at Abbott Point in my electorate, and to build a railway line connecting the two. Those thousands of jobs would have been filled by now were it not for the actions of the extreme Greens. Their campaign of lies, misinformation and frivolous legal action has successfully delayed those jobs for the past 3 years, a time that's seen 20,000 jobs or more lost from Queensland's resources sector. Now, if these were the actions of a competitor company or a competing country, then that competitor, I'm going to say, would probably be in very hot water indeed, because these extremists pretend to be environmental activists. They get off scot-free. Because they make this false connection to the Great Barrier Reef, then their gross tactics are accepted by many. But holding the reef to ransom is like putting a gun to society's head and saying, "Give me what I want or the reef gets it." And that's an act of eco-terrorism. Their lies, misinformation, slander and the frivolous legal action attacking a company for the sake of furthering an ideological cause, it can only be described as terrorism if you actually have a look at the criminal code. The actions of the extreme Greens have nothing to do with environmentalism, but they've got everything to do with the ideology of socialism. They don't want to fix climate change. They want to use climate change alarmism as an excuse for wealth redistribution, as an excuse for deindustrialisation, as an excuse to close down the mining industry. They don't want someone who's worked 2 jobs for 20 years to have more money than someone who can't be bothered getting up off the couch to collect their dole check. They want those hard-earned savings handed over. And the easiest way to do that is to impose a big fat carbon tax on the wealthy. And it doesn't matter that they're trashing jobs. It doesn't matter that they're trashing the lifestyles of many families. It doesn't matter to the extreme Greens if their actions are trashing Australia's reputation amongst investors, amongst suppliers, amongst customers. And they don't see it as trashing our children's future either, because they think there's going to be, or at least they say, that there's going to be equality. You know, our kids can be equally poor and jobless, I suppose. But their claim justification for the lies, misinformation and law-breaking that they undertake in the name of their ideology is actually wearing thin. They are clutching at straws. The latest legal challenge to the Galilee Basin, brought about by the Melbourne-based Australian Conservation Foundation, claims that it will destroy the reef. They have built an image which has been grasped in the minds of many of the latte sippers in the south, of drag lines actually out there digging up the reef to mine coal. But the coal mine's actually hundreds of kilometres from the nearest salt water, and even further than that from the Great Barrier Reef. Now, the extreme Greens claim expanding Abbott Point, the port that will export this coal, will kill the reef. But the truth is, dredging operations at Abbott Point are going to be 40 to 50 kilometres away from the Great Barrier Reef, and the spoil that's going to be dredged up is going to be disposed of on land. on the port's own land. That is what the extreme Greens insisted happen. That is what is being done, and yet they still oppose it, yet they still claim it's going to harm the reef. Now, this last-ditch scam, and that's the only word I can use, Deputy Speaker, is scam from the extremists, is to claim that burning the coal is going to increase global emissions and therefore the reef is going to be destroyed. But the reality actually, when you have a long, hard look at it, it's quite the opposite. If the Carmichael coal mine project goes ahead, this is what will happen. Thousands of Australian families will have jobs. Those workers will have the protection of Australia's strong labour laws and safety regulations. The high-quality coal that will come out of that mine will be mined under the rigorous environmental regulations that we have in Australia, especially for this project. And most importantly, Indian coal-fired power generators will burn Australian coal instead of foreign coal, say coming from Indonesia, where the ash content is high. Australian coal is much higher quality than that foreign coal and will produce fewer emissions than coal that has high ash content. So the net impact is actually a lowering of emissions. And if the climate alarmists honestly believed emissions are going to kill the reef, then they should be out there picketing support for the Carmichael mine project. That is the reality. India is going to burn the coal. They have built new generators and they're going to be building more, and they're going to use those generators to bring hundreds of millions of people out of energy poverty, something else that the socialists should be barracking for. That's the reality. And no matter how hard the extreme Greens wish it, they can't change that reality with social media campaigns, attacks on the coal industry, demonising hard-working coal miners in North Queensland and Central Queensland. They can't change the reality. Now, I know the extreme Greens and their fellow travellers and movements like Socialist Alliance and the Socialist Alternative, they have this idea in their heads of some utopia where everything is rainbows and lollipops. And I know that the Greens, particularly the Australian Greens, have this pipe dream about spending trillions of dollars on health and education systems and having the most generous welfare system on this planet and this country. But with all due respect, I say to the Greens, the world you want can't be conjured up with pixie dust and unicorn bottom burps. It will be built with jobs, not unemployment. It will require economic growth, not economic vandalism. It will be built with technological advances. That must be funded. And wasting trillions of dollars on killing economies around the world won't help. It won't help technology, it won't help the climate, and it certainly won't help the thousands of families in North Queensland and in Central Queensland who desperately need jobs right now. There used to be members in this place who would compromise their socialist dreams for the sake of getting people into jobs. Unfortunately, I've got to say that from what I've seen so far, and I don't want to be too critical, but from what I've seen so far, the Labor Party hasn't done anything in regards to this project and the jobs it'll create, because even though the unions give them money, and the unions will benefit out of this, I suppose, it's going to be the Greens who dictate policy because of preferences. Now, the Labor Party needs to understand that while the Greens might dictate policy to them through the preference system that we have in this country, that those policies are actually destroying jobs, reducing the number of workers that could become union members, and drying up funds that need to be in Central and North Queensland to stimulate good, strong, sustainable local economies. And in the end, if we keep with that, there's going to be no Labor Party. There's just going to be the Greens. They will overtake the Labor Party because their ideology will reach out to the hard left, and what you're going to do is dry up all the jobs and all the hard-working union members in industries like coal. Now, with this motion today, I'm calling on the Labor Party to do the right thing by workers, do the right thing by jobs in Central and North Queensland, support legislation, support the government in restoring fairness and common sense to this whole situation. I call on members opposite, and I know we've got a very good member from Moreton here sitting at the front desk, and I actually call on him to support legislation that's going to curb lawfare or support efforts that's going to do that, and these acts of eco-terrorism that this movement keeps on pushing at us. I call on him and other members opposite to support jobs, to get Australia back to work, create the wealth that will fund the high standard of living that we want to have in this country. But we need these jobs desperately, and I hope the Labor Party gets on board with the government to get these jobs.